it's great to run the big numbers, but how's your family? What you're doing in the community. So that would be my advice, because once they're gone. And probably if I'd written down more stuff, my mom told me I'd have more sage to give out. But yeah, I think that would be the advice, that try to give all the major boxes attention. Don't just give it to one box.
We're going to transition a little more. Just over the years, you've gained obviously so much wisdom and life experience, and we're just going to ask you some practical questions where you can share the wisdom of what you've learned over the years with the people that listen. So I just want to start out. What have you done over the years that you found most impactful in raising children?
Oh, raising children. So let me start with family structure, right? So I'm married. I have a 40-year-old son and daughter in love. I'm gonna call her daughter-in-law. I call her my daughter-in-love. But most impactful is the 2-year-old grandbaby. Let me just say that. Don't even play. Just skip past all those people and go to the grandbaby. But I am from a large family, as you heard me talk about earlier, Mike, and so when you are from a large family, you have family members at different places along the spectrum. Everybody's lived a pretty successful life. I have 15 nephews and great nephews. And so most of my time now is poured into getting them onto, one's in college. Okay, you need to have your first internship. Okay, helping them. One of the other ones just got his first corporate job the other day, and he's just over the moon. And so one, you want to hope that you set a good role model for your family. And then two, the second thing I'm doing is really starting to be intentional about passing things on to them. Putting the younger people on committees for different family events, and here's how you can help. So it's taking, and we have a close-knit family, so it's taking all of the pieces and then say, where does it make sense that I contribute, and where does it make sense that I need to pull back on this one? Because that family, and I have a extensive extended family. So then you have a lot of pieces there. So for me, it's about balance is probably the one word that I would use, because you can't rush in and take care of all of the stuff. It's balance and letting them contribute and do what makes sense for them. I will tell you that the family dynamic is probably the toughest dynamic of all, because and especially I would say in African-American families or families of color, where there's a whole different dynamic that you have to deal with. It's a different space and place, and you don't have as many people in your family that's maybe as successful, and so you have to manage through all of that. And I think spiritually, there's a lot of people who think that the scripture, it's harder for a rich man to get through the needle. So being rich, I don't know if you're okay or not. It was a huge dynamic for me to navigate, because I wasn't prepared for that, and to be able to do that. So that was the biggest piece. But family now, it's grandbaby, it's fun, it's everybody's like, oh, I'm a Mimi, so Mimi's free, and that's a good thing. So that's the fun part.
As you were in the middle of your big, busy corporate career, how did you balance being a mom and your work as well?
So my son is a stepson, so he's not my and he was not in my life at the height of that. But it's still an issue, because you have to stop and take the time. I mean, now it's being intentional about planning. We were just online last night getting a house for the summer to to go with the grandbaby to the beach and, just spend some time together. It came home real clear to me, and my grandbaby was during COVID, and my husband and I were discussing this. We, after the baby was maybe 8 weeks or something, a little older, and we went up because they're in the DC area. So we went up, rented a house in Annapolis, laid all this stuff out, and I was like, whoo, I'm exhausted. But as soon as that grandbaby came in the room, we were done. All right, it's all good. So being intentional, I know, right? I'm now, as we look at it, it's really being intentional about planning for family events, to focus on, there's the bigger group, that's the 35 to 50 that might show up for something. And then there's the smaller group, which is really, my son, his wife, the baby, us, the 5 of us being together in a quieter space. So I think it's putting the energy to plan with your family the same as we put the energy to plan anyplace else. Because really, if you think of it spiritually, our spouses, our family, that should be our first love. And I don't think in the midst of all of the corporate running, it was always a priority. And so that would be, if I could go back and change anything, that would have probably been the one thing I would have changed, because I'm not sure I made that a priority in the way that I should have.
And how do you, when you are a success outlier in a family, and it can happen in any situation, not just, agricultural or a country community versus moving to the city, it can be, like in my family, my brothers are all way smarter than me. They're sort of PhDs, and I was a solid C student that got into, McGill University by just sheer luck, and then I had to try to survive. But I learned how to create wealth early in life, and I didn't navigate that transition well. I came across like, okay, now I'm financially independent, so now I'm going to do something more important than having, just being a real estate developer. So for you, with so many sisters, and coming back home after an intense corporate career like you just described, how did you navigate back into the family in a way that didn't come across as like I just described, where it's like, here I am.
I haven't talked to y'all in years, but I'm here now. Now, what it has always been for me. I forever have hosted Christmas for so many years, and I really went out of my way to make people feel special, and I also went out of my way to be inclusive. And I'll give you an example of that. One year I'd been home, and my mother's vehicle was having some challenges, and I was thinking, okay, she needs a new vehicle. And I was like, okay, when I get back, I'll call. I have a cousin who works for a dealership. I'll call him, tell him to take the blah blah blah, done, right? And so I came home, went to bed, and I woke up about 4 that morning and said, God said, you're doing it all wrong. You need to have everybody feel included. And I was like, but that's going to take effort. It's going to take work. I'm going to have to invest some time. So it was like, okay. And I literally had to stop and put together a plan. So I called my cousin who worked for the dealership, and I said, okay, we need to get my mom a new truck. The whole family's going to contribute. We'll collect from them, and then whatever the balance is, I'll pay it. But all I want you to do is don't discuss the balance. I just need you to find the vehicle. He's like, okay, I got you. And then I reached out to the whole family and said, you guys, we're going to get a new truck for my mother because she loved trucks. And everyone has to contribute. I don't care if it's $1. And so everyone contributed. They contributed. You had some people who gave 1,000. You had some, it was all over the board. I wrote him the check for what was left. We created a whole sign. This is from your family. The kids and grandbabies and my nephews were holding up the sign when we drove up the truck, and she almost passed out. And that, so that was that's what I learned. It's not always doing what's easy, but it's doing what's significant.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a sweet memory.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some people in the family that don't know that story, that maybe you've been born since then, or I think it is funny that your mom drove a truck. But, one thing I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but going back at the season you're in now and capturing those stories of where the family did something extraordinary and where God showed up, or where you made a difference in the town, and then sharing that with future generations. I know your grandbaby's just 2, but pretty soon you shake a stick. I was just over at the pool with 2 of our grandbabies, and they're swimming. I'm like, how does that happen?
Yes.
These were toddlers before, just a short while ago.
Right. Now they grow up fast, and you do have to pass on the history. I totally agree with you. And it just seemed like the time you go, oh, the gift of time is so important. But yeah, you're right. It's spending time when you're together, talking about important things and telling those stories. I love that, Lloyd. That's a great. It's a great idea. Yeah, great idea.
Hattie, as you've gone through the halftime program the last year, what exercises have you found most beneficial in this process, like the roadmap, or are there certain things that you've done through the halftime program that you felt have had the biggest impact in your life, besides Lloyd's coaching, of course?
Yes. I am probably a halftime outlier. Can I call myself that, Lloyd? I'm probably a halftime outlier. Because my original approach to halftime was because my boss asked me to go check out the program and see, he had such respect for Bob Buford. So he's like, go check it out. And they were calling me, and I'm like, it's just me and him. I'm starting this foundation. Every time I try to schedule, no, can't schedule because he's got somewhere else we have to do. Because if you think in 2021, it was in 2022, it was just Zoom, 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 Zoom all day, every day. And so I kept saying, God, there must be something wonderful about this, because I can't get I can't get scheduled. And so I finally got the schedule, and it literally happened. That's why I knew it was a God thing, because it happened totally not expecting it. And it was, oh yeah, I can go. Let's book it, done. And it was like done. And so I approached it with, I'm reviewing this program for TD Jakes to see if it might be valuable in his, with his leaders in his sphere of influence. And so my approach, I think, was a bit different. One of the best parts of my coaching that, Lloyd, that you asked me one time, but what about you? And I'm like, I don't have time to worry about me. I'm here to get this done, and when you're in that busy mode, it's like, okay. And then about midway, I started to feel the change, and I also started to feel the transition. And so when you start to feel the change and the transition, I go back to my basic, be still and know. So I had to get quiet and start listening. And it was really toward the end of the experience that I was like, okay, it's time for the next chapter. So the halftime experience for me was, when people say it changed my life, no, it really did change my life. It is a truly life-changing experience, because I sit here now in the space of repositioning, and I'm intentionally repositioning. And I don't want to, I was thinking transition, but I don't know that it's transition. I'm really going to reposition how I approach every aspect of my life. So for me, it was everything, because it's given me my life back.
Margie Blanchard, Ken Blanchard's wife, and really one of the big reasons of the success of their consulting business is just her wisdom and expertise around human transformation. She said that as she was approaching her 80th birthday, she said to me that every major transition in her life, she had to create a vacuum for the Spirit of God to fill it. And I love listening to people that are, 20 years older than me. She's just almost exactly 20 years older than me. I'm 61 now. And I thought to myself, that takes discipline to really want to be the soil that is producing 100x return and still take time to create a vacuum for the Spirit of God to fill it. And that's what I see you doing. When you wake up in the morning, is there something that you have to train your mind to do? You just talked a minute ago about using a new key performance indicator of how well did I stay in the presence of the Lord today? Yeah. How do you shape your mind for creating a vacuum like that for listening?
We do 5 a.m. Central Time prayer call, and we do it every day except weekends. And so in that time, I always ask God to speak to me about my day and give me the scripture that, like, I've been in this peace. It's been the scriptures that are constantly coming to me every morning. It's about peace. And so I look for the scripture, my reading for that day, that I was kind of getting a little irritated a few weeks ago because it's just so much going on. And God led me to this reading that was in one of the books that I didn't even use all the time, but it talked about the world will have troubles, but I'm still here. I didn't go nowhere. I was all good. You take comfort in knowing that even in the worst of things that are happening, that God is still, my mother used to say this to me all the time, God is still in control, baby. It don't matter who's this, who's that, God is still in control. And as I start repositioning, I'm trying to turn down the noise of all the things happening in the world and know that God is still in control. And then I say, okay, what do you want me to do with this day? Today was a perfect example. I had someone ask me for breakfast. She's a 30-year-old. She needs mentoring and some things, and which is a part of my give back. And so we met for breakfast. And what was so telling to me, and this is a great thing for people as you start to reposition your life. She said, when we were leaving, she hugged me, and we were there till like 10 o'clock from like 7. And she said, you didn't look at your watch not once. She's like, are you really retired? So I'm like, yeah, I really am. Whatever it is, it'll wait. You have my full attention. And so I think what I'm walking away with is my focus to be present with God is also going to help me be present with other people, as opposed to constantly running through that phone when I'm sitting there talking to people. So it's just,
Well, I was going to ask, with the work you've been doing with TD Jakes, and you've obviously seen a lot of the issues in our country these days, especially in the inner city, has that changed your heart for what you want to focus on in the next season? Like the influence, I don't know, maybe you can give a little perspective on like what you were passionate about before, or were you already focused on inner city issues and that's just further magnified your interest in them?
We spent a lot of in my corporate chapter, I spent a lot of time in corporate America looking at leadership and culture, customer service, but in a lot of in the last 20 plus years, the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all of that work. And what I've realized as I move into this next chapter, I think God can use me to really help bridge some of those, because very often in our communities, especially our communities of color, they assume that nobody cares and no one wants to do anything, and what do we do? How do we do it? And then in our Caucasian communities and corporate communities, you have wonderful people going, we really want to help and be a part, and we want to help, but want to make a difference, but we don't know how. If you look at what happened after George Floyd, corporate America donated trillions of dollars or set aside, and then they didn't know what to do with it. And so everybody was trying to figure out, what do we do? And so a part of it is being a voice to bridge both of those things together, because I know there's good people on in the corporate space, and there's good people in the community space. And so I know, for example, TD Jakes can be trusted to do good doing business with this corporation. So when what I think I can do is to bring those voices together, bringing corporate America into a room with a power broker like a TD Jakes and them actually having a conversation. So we brokered that several times during the time I was in the role, and we'll continue to do that anywhere we see the opportunity, because what's going to make us better is us all reaching out and coming together. So when I think of the go forward, I want to spend my time trying to be a bridge for that gap that it just has gotten, I think, a little wider over the last few years, and having people circle back and really help them understand that, this is an all of us thing. This is not a one of us or a two of us. It's going to take all of us to come back to the center of putting God first and being in his presence and understanding what we need to do. There's a reason that, we're in the richest country in the world. And there's a reason that I go right out here downtown Dallas and I see so many homeless people. What is that? And how do we fix it?
Mm. And how do you paid your dues by being in corporate America successfully for so long. And then, like you said, being partnered, it was such a big brand in TD Jakes ministry and what you developed together. And that it strikes me that in this next season, you've moved from kind of a warrior when you were building your career to king, as you were running stuff for a long time, to sage, right? Where you bring wisdom and you bring a measured voice and you bring true compassion. I can see it in your heart. And I've heard it over the last year or two.
I like
your heart for both the people that are suffering because they're just short on resources or wraparound services to get a head start. And those people like Micah trying to make a difference. Micah, I love his story that he's built a chain of hotels where all the profits fund ministry in the east side of Nashville, right near the Gulch. So if you stay in his boutique hotel one night, I think it's 16 nights, right, that a homeless person can stay, or 100 showers or 30 meals. And but what Mike has been doing is finding great partners down there that really understand the human need. Mm-hmm. And so I see that in you, this bridge role, but more like a sage, not running and gunning like you had to do in your two previous kind of career stints. But and it was interesting because Peter Drucker said to Bob at about the same age that you and I are, that now you need to release and direct the energy of others and no longer supply the energy.
Oh, nice. Now that's good. Yeah. And that's the young person that I was talking to. She's in her 30s. She wants to be on board. She wants to, get involved in the community. And I'm like, okay, let me just make a list and get you ready to go. Because you're right. I don't have to do it, but I can place people who can move to that next area in their life, no matter what's going on. They want to give back to the community. I think that I love that as it's for me to share wisdom. I have to make sure that I am being more wise every day, which means I have to keep reading, I have to keep studying, I have to keep understanding, and then able to pass that on. So I love sage. It makes me feel like I need to sit up straight. No, that's great.
Hattie, as we wrap up, if you can remember back just a couple years, and it's timely because you just had breakfast this morning with a 30-year-old, but if you had to give yourself advice at 30, what advice would you give with the perspective of hindsight?
Oh, wow. If I had to
just a couple years ago.
Just a couple years. Oh, yay. You win. You win, Mike. You win. So, I think that if I had to go back, and I'll preface this by kind of talking about the most difficult time of my life, which was December of 2020 when we buried my mother, Christmas Eve. And what I have thought about over and over again is in the run of performance. Did I spend enough time being present with her? Because you have no more opportunities. So the presence of being with God, being with family, the work is great, but you don't need to put that before the most important, your faith and then your family. And I think that it's for us in our age group that, as baby boomers, most of us, it was all about the run, the performance. And so if I had to go back, and we actually was just literally having this conversation as she's early 30s, and it's like, okay, but let's talk. It's great to run the big numbers, but how's your family? What you're doing in the community. So that would be my advice, because once they're gone, they're gone. And probably if I'd written down more stuff, my mom told me I'd have more sage to give out. But yeah, I think that would be the advice that try to give all the major boxes attention. Don't just give it to one box.
That's a good word right there. Well, Lloyd, do you have any parting thoughts?
Yeah, yes, I Hattie, I just love your heart and wisdom and humility and grace and elegance. And I just think the Lord's that your biggest contribution is still ahead, even though you have made such a big contribution. So I am looking forward to being part of the journey with you and celebrating what the Lord does through you and Stafford, and seeing the joy that comes from that, and just so privileged to be a small part of your journey.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for including me in this. Whatever my 100-fold is, it's got to be even more, because now that I've had all this wonderful time to think it through, this is awesome. And I look forward to being in God's presence and seeing what he's going to do. So thank you for that.
Hattie, thank you so much for doing this today. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the 100X podcast. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast service. We would greatly appreciate it if you could rate the show and leave us a review. This podcast is sponsored by Anchor Investments, whose mission is to build America's most generous real estate company. To learn more, please visit anchorinv.com.